Hi there, 7th graders. It's Mrs. Tremblay. I am here to go through your Chapter 2 review on linear equations with you. And just keep in mind that as you are checking this, you should be turning in a packet with all correct answers. So if you make a mistake, I do want you to fix it. So you can press pause while you fix it and then maybe make a star by any that you have trouble with, that you're not sure why you got it wrong. Make a little star, make a note to yourself, put some sticky notes on there so that you can remember to ask me in class about it on Wednesday. All right, so the first three, it's finding the slope of a line. And all you need to remember for the slope of a line is rise over run. And yes, simplest form must happen. So with this first line going from point to point, I'll start down here, why not? It looks like I have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which to start off, I would have 4/6. Which simplifies to 2/3. So final answer, 2/3. For number 2, the slope of this line, any horizontal line, does have a slope of 0. And if you forgot which one's which, if you did rise over run on this, you would go up 0, and then you could say right however many. Let's say I went right 3. It doesn't matter how far right or left, 0 divided by anything is 0. For number 3, you can either go down and right or up and left. I'll go down and right. Why not? It doesn't matter. And for this one, it looks like we have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which would make it a -6. And right 2, so that would be a +2. And a -6 over a +2 simplifies to -3. If you did put a -3 over 1, that would also be fine because you're writing your answer as a ratio. It's all good. So hopefully so far so good. All right, in the next 3 problems, I ask you to find the slope of the line containing each pair of points, and be sure to write your answer in simplest form. So for this one, you need to remember the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I usually will underline the ones that go together and circle the others that go together. And for this, remember it's y over x, the change in y over the change in x. So if I take the second y minus the first y, which becomes plus +5, and I take the second x minus the first x, which would become plus +3. I get 10 plus 5, which is 15, over 0 plus 3, which is 3. And my final slope answer should be 5. Again, if you wrote that as 5 over 1, totally fine. Don't leave it as 15/3, though. Okay, for number 5, again, I'm going to underline, circle, circle. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 6 minus 10, or 6 plus -10 is -4. -8 minus 4, or -8 plus -4 is -12. First off, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 4 goes into both 4 and 12. 4 goes into 4 once, and into 12 3 times. So your final answer should be a +1/3. Don't write a -1 over a -3. That's not simplest form. We know that a negative divided by a negative is a positive. All right, for number 6, I'm going to underline, circle, circle. -9 minus -9, or plus positive, over 5 minus 4 gives me, when you add opposites, additive inverse, you get nothing. And 5 minus 4 is 1. And 0 divided by any number is 0. So final answer, simplified form, just a 0 is all I need. All right, next, I ask you to list the slope and y-intercept given by each equation. And then I want you to graph it using that. So you need to make sure your equation is in y equals mx plus b form first. And this one is, you might want to do some keep, change so that you don't get that -1 confused with a +1. Your slope here is the coefficient of x, which is a -2. And your b as an ordered pair, if it's a y-intercept, that means it's what y is when x is 0. So 0, and the number by itself is a -1. To graph that, you first plot the y-intercept, so 0, -1 is down here, and a slope of -2. Remember that when we're trying to graph with the slope, we need it to be written as a fraction. I can write any whole number over 1. So for my movement here, if my slope is -2, that means down 2, right 1. So from this point here, I will go down 2 and right 1, and I'll do that one more time because we can fit it. And your line should be a decreasing line because it is a negative slope. All the way through the graph should look like that. All right, in the next equation that we have, I see that it's not solved for y. Y is not all by itself. So first I'm going to keep change, so I realize that that's a negative 1/3 x, and I'll need to move that to the other side by adding a positive 1/3 x. So your equation, I didn't leave you tons of room here, did I? It's just y equals 1/3 x, because it wasn't in slope-intercept form to start. So now I can see my slope is a positive 1/3, and remember when b is not listed, it means you're adding 0. So the y-intercept is 0, 0. That means on my graph, I'm going to plot my y-intercept of 0, 0. And if my slope is 1/3, that means up 1, right 3, up 1, right 3. You could also go down 1, left 3. But it's not necessary. We fit it all like this all the way through. So it should look like that. All right, number 9. Again, it's not solved for y. So we need to get rid of this positive 2, so I'm going to add a negative 2. That'll cancel it out. My final equation should be y equals negative 3/4 x plus negative 2. Negative 3/4 x plus negative 2 is what you should have. That means my slope is negative 3/4. So that can either be a negative 3/4, or it could be a 3/4, whatever fits, whatever you want to do. It's the same thing. And the number by itself is a negative 2. So my b is 0, negative 2. Be sure to list those as ordered pairs. I don't know if I'd mentioned that in class at all, but I'd like you to list your intercept as ordered pairs. Haha. All right, 0, negative 2 means 0 down 2. Now, if I chose to put the negative with the 3, then I went down 3 and right 4. If I chose to put the negative with the 4, then I went up 3 and left 4. And either way, you can see those are both points on the same exact line. If your line has another ordered pair, you don't have this one and you have another one down here, fine. Or if you have this one and another one up here, that's fine. All right, page 1 is done. Moving along, turn your page. We're now on page 2, where we are going to deal with some standard form equations, because I ask you to find the x and y intercepts and then use them to graph each equation. So we're still graphing the equation, but I want you to use the intercepts instead, so I can make sure you understand standard form. Standard form is that ax plus by equals c form. And as you can see, this one's already in that form, so I'm going to keep change. When I ask you to find the intercepts, if I want to find the x-intercept, basically you're plugging in 0 for y. And I would have an equation that looks like this. And if you're finding the y-intercept, you'd plug in 0 for x, and you'd end up with an equation that looks like that. So basically, you just had to solve these little one-steps. Your x-intercept is 2, so that means 2, 0. Your y-intercept, after you divide by a negative 2, is negative 3, so that means 0, negative 3. Now what we have to do is plot those 2 points. So on your graph, if my x-intercept is 2, 0, that means 2 on the x-axis, over 2, up 0. If my y-intercept is negative 3, that means over 0, down 3 on the y-axis. So your line should look like this. All set. All right, moving along. Next one, same kind of thing. This is already written in standard form for you. So I want to know, I guess first we'll find the x-intercept. So when y is 0, I'm left with 2x equals negative 2. And when x is 0, I'm left with negative y equals negative 2. So we're just solving for both of those to find the intercepts. Divide by 2. The x-intercept should be negative 1, so negative 1, 0. And your y-intercept, negative y means negative 1y. Divide them both by negative 1, and your y-intercept is a positive 2. So that means 0, 2. So that means on your graph, if my x-intercept is negative 1, that means on your graph, you should have a negative 1 on the x-axis. And if your y-intercept is a positive 2, that means you have a positive 2 on your y-axis. So now we have our 2 points, 2 points. And you'll draw your line through. It should look like that. Okay, moving along. In the next section, I give you the slope and a point, and I ask you to write me an equation in point-slope form of the line with a given slope that passes through the given point. Point-slope form is that y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. So with this, you didn't have to do any rearranging. It's as simple as plugging in. So y minus, I see that my y that's given is 5, equals my slope times the quantity of x. And this is a negative 3 here. So I want to do minus negative 3, which would mean I end up with plus 3 at the end. You didn't have to do anything else. I asked for point slope form, the end. All right, next one, same thing. Y, and if it's y minus negative 6, because this is my x, this is my y, that would mean y plus 6. And my slope is 2/3. My x is 4. So be x minus 4, because it's x minus whatever x sub 1 is. So that's that section. All right. Now I ask you for an equation in slope-intercept form that passes through the given points. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. But remember, we need the slope and b in order to write it in slope-intercept form. So when you're given 2 points and one of them's not the y-intercept, that means you're going to have to find the slope, use that point slope formula, and eventually rearrange it back into what you want. So step 1, let's find the slope. Underline, underline, circle, circle. To find your slope, you take y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We start off with negative 10 over 5, and we get negative 2 for a slope. All right, I'm going to use my first ordered pair. Like I said in class, I tend to use the first one. If you use the other one, you don't need to erase everything. You'll get the same answer in the end. All right, so y minus 7, there's that 7 there, equals my slope of negative 2 that we just got, times the quantity of x, and minus negative 3 means plus 3. Since I want slope-intercept form, I now need to, I just wrote plus negative 7 to keep change, distribute. So it'll be negative 2x plus a negative 2 times 3 is a negative 6. We'll add our 7 to get y isolated, and y equals negative 2x. A negative 6 plus 7 is a positive 1. 1 down. All right, so here we go. Number 15, same thing. Underline, underline, circle, circle. To find my slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 10 minus 8 is 2. Negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. That means my slope is negative 1/2. Negative 1/2. All right, I'm going to use the first ordered pair. Y minus, the y given is 8, equals the slope, negative 1/2, times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. And again, we're going to do some rearranging. So negative 1/2 x, negative 1/2 times x is negative 1/2 x. I'm going to keep change here so I can see that, oh, a negative times a negative is a positive. And when you take negative 1/2 times negative 2, you would end up getting 2 over 2, which is 1. And let's add an 8 so that negative 8 will go away. And y equals negative 1/2 x plus 9. That should be your final answer there. All right, scooch it on over. One more of these. These come with practice, right? A whole whopping 3 of them. I know, it's crazy. 2 minus negative 3, so y2 minus y1, over negative 2 minus negative 4. I'm going to keep change that. So 2 plus 3 is 5, and negative 2 plus 4 is 2. So I have 5 halves here. Yes, you could write it as 2.5. Usually we leave slope as a ratio, so leave it as a ratio for now. It'll make it easier in the long run for you. Our goal is to get that final equation anyhow. So y, and my y sub 1 is negative 3, so minus negative 3 is plus 3. My slope of 5/2 times x minus negative 4 would be plus 4. All right, let's get rid of those parentheses. 5/2 times x is 5/2 x. Plus, when I take 5/2 times 4, you could cross cancel if you want, or just look at it as 5 times 4 is 20, 2 times 1 is 2, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. So right here we should have 5/2 x plus 10. Now I'm going to add a negative 3 or subtract 3, same thing. And I end up with y equals 5/2 x plus 7. If at this point you did change it to y equals 2.5 x plus 7, that's fine. But leaving it like that for now is a-okay with me. All right, next page. For number 17, I ask you to write an equation in slope-intercept form, so that's y equals mx plus b, of a line that passes through 6, negative 4, and is parallel to, and I give you an equation there. Okay, So remember that parallel equations have the same exact slope, right? So the m that's given by this equation is -3. Remember, the slope is the coefficient of x. And the ordered pair that I give you is 6, -4. So basically, we're going to take this slope and the point, plug it into point slope, and rearrange it. All right, so y minus -4 would be y plus 4. Our slope that we want is -3 because we want it to be parallel, and it'd be x minus 6 because that's the x value given. Keep change. All right, I need to distribute first. So -3 times x is -3x, and -3 times -6 is positive 18. Now we're going to add our -4, or subtract 4. I know, same thing. And y equals -3x. 18 plus -4 is a positive 14. So this equation would be parallel to that line there. They have the same exact slope, and it would pass through the ordered pair 6, -4. Now I give you the same kind of scenario, except I ask you to write an equation that's perpendicular instead. So you have to remember that perpendicular equations have opposite reciprocal slopes. So if the slope given by this is -3, that means the slope that I'm going to need needs to be the opposite of negative, which is positive, and the reciprocal of 3, which is 1/3. So the slope that you should use for this is 1/3. And it's the same exact ordered pair. We want 6, -4. So we're going to plug all this into that point slope formula and get slope intercept at the end. So y minus -4 is y plus 4. And I have 1/3 times the quantity of x minus 6. Start off by distributing. 1/3 times x is 1/3 x. And then I'm going to have plus, it's going to be a negative. And when you take 1/3 times 6, or 1/3 times -6, yes, it's a negative, you end up getting 6/3, which is 2. So you should have a -2 in this spot. We're going to add a -4, and y equals 1/3 x, and -2 plus a -4 is a -6. That should be your final answer for that one. And again, you can pause anytime. You can erase, rewrite. I'm expecting to get a review handed in with a whole bunch of correct answers and maybe some stars by them with questions that you plan on asking me in class. Or if you're a fan of sticky notes, I love them. Put some sticky notes all over this with how did you get that -2? Or why is that a -6? Or why did we use 1/3 again? Those are the types of questions you might have. All right, now on to the math stories. Saving the best for last. I know, everybody sees all the words and like, yes, I love story problems. Anyway, a cell phone plan costs $25 per month plus 5 cents for each minute used. So with this, I'm not going to tell you most of the time what I'd want, even though for letter A, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form. That doesn't mean that you're given the information for slope-intercept form. Let's see what we're given here. It says $25 per month, so that's a rate, that's a slope. And then it says 5 cents, $25 per month, that would be the monthly charge at the end. And then 5 cents for each minute used. All right, so I'm thinking, hopefully you're thinking, that y equals this $25. I know it says per month and it's kind of a little bit confusing, but when you get a bill, I don't know if any of you have cell phone bills yet that you're responsible for. It happens every month. So we're looking at it as it happens one time per month. That's your B. The 5 cents per each minute used is what happens every single minute. So that is what should get the X. That's the equation that you should have. All right, now letter B says, what would the total bill be if you use 350 minutes? So again, you're going to get a monthly bill here. So I'm asking you if when the minutes are 350, what your total bill is. Now here it says total cost Y and minute X. So I know that when I say 350 minutes, that means I'm plugging 350 in for X and trying to solve for Y. In other words, or in other numbers, Y equals, I'm going to have my $25 plus I'm going to pay 5 cents 350 times. So all you basically need to do to figure out your total bill is multiply 350 by the 5 cents a minute and add your 25 to it. So when you do that, you end up getting a total of $42.50. That's your total bill. All right, now letter C is a little bit different. It asks you, how many minutes did you use if your total bill was 75? So remember, Y is your total bill, right? So now I'm saying that Y is 75. And I want to know how many minutes. So that means we're solving for X. So if you look back up to your original equation is Y equals 25 plus 0.05X. I'm now saying the total is 75. So we're replacing Y with 75 and now solving for X. This is just like a regular old two-step equation. So if I want X isolated, that means this 25 needs to go. I'm left with 50 equals 0.05X. You divide by that 5/100, and we find out, if you take 50 divided by 5/100, you get 1,000. So 1,000 minutes, $75. It's not too bad. I think that might be enough for Mrs. Galena and I to finish our Saturday conversations, you know? All right, moving along. Turn your page. Last one. Woohoo! Okay. I purchased bagels and donuts for breakfast. Those of you that know me know that that wouldn't happen. I purchased egg whites and whole wheat toast for breakfast. But in this magical land of made-up information, I bought bagels and donuts. Bagels are $2 each, and donuts are $1.50 each, and I spent $24. Now I'm hoping you noticed with this that we have a cost of bagels, so that's a rate, and we have a cost of donuts, and that's a rate, and I give you a grand total, that's a constant. So this is set up perfectly for standard form. That's why I ask you to write an equation in standard form. And I want you to use X for bagels and Y for donuts. So if bagels are $2 each, that would mean 2X. And if donuts are $1.50 each, that would mean 1.5 times Y. And the total cost is $24 for all of that. So that should have been step 1. That should be your equation. Letter B, I ask you to identify the X and Y intercepts. So I'm basically asking you to figure out, what if I only bought bagels? How many would I buy? And what if I only bought donuts? How many of those can I buy? So if I want to know the X intercept, I'm going to plug 0 in for Y, which leaves me with 2X equals 24. And if I want to know the Y intercept, I'd plug in 0 for X, which leaves me with 1.5Y equals 24. To find my x-intercept, I divide by 2, and I get 12. In other words, 12, 0. And when I find my y-intercept, 24 divided by 1.5, should have gotten 16 for that, or 0, 16. And again, if you had to graph that, I didn't ask you to, so don't worry, but you would plot 12 on the x-axis, over 12 up 0, over 0 up 16, and we talked a lot in class about how every single point on that line represents the number of bagels and donuts I could purchase. I guess with this one it wouldn't be half amounts, because I don't really think you can go in and buy half of a donut. Who knows? Try it sometime, see what happens. Letter C asks, how many bagels did I buy if I bought 4 donuts? Now if we had a graph, that would be great. We could just follow it over, but I don't. So if you look at your original equation here, it asks how many bagels you bought if you bought 4 donuts. Remember that we asked bagels to be X, right? The number of bagels is X. So I'm trying to figure out that bagel amount. It says that if I bought 4 donuts. Well, Y is the number of donuts. So basically this is just asking you to plug 4 in for Y and solve it. So when you do that, 1.5 times 4 is 6. So it's really just a two-step. It's 2x plus 6 equals 24. And you will add your negative 6 or subtract your 6. 2x equals 24 minus 6 is 18. Divide by 2. And you should have x equals 9. So that means if you ended up buying 4 donuts, that with that $24 you were able to buy 9 bagels. Alright, last but not least, the grand finale here. A car's value depreciates. Depreciates is talking about how much it's going down by. Okay? Appreciates means you're gaining money on a car. That doesn't happen. Like the second you drive a car off the lot, you've lost like $5,000. It's crazy. So anyhow, a car's value goes down at a rate of $2,500 a year. 3 years after it was purchased, its value is $21,000. Letter A says to write an equation in slope-intercept form that represents this situation using y for the value of the car and x for the number of years that have passed. Now with slope-intercept, you're probably thinking, okay, so you need an m and you need a b, and maybe you see that your slope is negative 2,500 because it's depreciating. That means it's going down by that. You're not given a y-intercept, but you are given a point. If I say to use y for the total value of the car and x for the number of years that have passed, up here it says 3 years after it was purchased, it was worth $21,000. That means you're given the point 21,000. Yep. So what we're going to do is what we did on the second page of this. We're going to plug this into Pointslope Form and rearrange it back into slope-intercept. So first off, there's my slope, there's my point. I'm going to do y minus y sub 1 equals my slope times x minus x sub 1. Go ahead and keep change right now. So I have, oh, why did I put a 3 there? Should say 2,500. I'm sure you would have told me if we were in class right now. All right, and your negative sign. Sorry for the pen. If I wrote in pencil, you wouldn't be able to see it. Okay, so from here, I need to distribute. So y plus negative 21,000 equals negative 2,500x plus, now when you take this negative and multiply it by another negative, we get positive 7,500. So that's what your next step should look like. That's 7,500. Now I need this 21,000 to go away, so y can be by itself. And y equals negative 2,500x plus, you have to take 7,500 plus 2,100, which is 28,500. So this shows that my rate of change is negative 2,500 because every year it's going down by 2,500. And then plus b, 28,500. Letter B asks you, what is the original cost of the car? And doesn't the b in your equation tell you when x is 0 what y is? It does, right? So if the time were 0, isn't that the original cost of the car? So the b in this equation is the original cost of the car. The car was $28,500. Hopefully it's a good one. Letter C asks, how much will the car be worth after 6 years? So I'm giving you the time here. Time is a gift. Take it. If I ask you how much it's worth after 6 years, go back to your original equation. Y equals negative 2,500x plus plus 28,500. That's a weird looking 2 if I've ever seen one. Now you can see it. Sorry. And if I want to know how much it's worth after 6 years, x represents time, right? So you're basically just solving this when x is 6. So if you figure all this out, negative 2,500 times 6 plus 28,500, this car that you originally paid $28,500 for, after 6 years, it's worth $13,500. True story. All right, come to me with a whole bunch of questions on Wednesday. See ya.